Hello, this is Jijo, and I thought I'll create a series of lessons on legal reasoning for the CLAT. Probably in the next 10 days, I'll put up about 5 video lessons trying to give you a perspective on how to deal with this section of legal reasoning, which is, I believe, an important section of the CLAT. And what we're going to learn in this particular lesson is the skill set required to handle legal reasoning questions. Now, the legal reasoning in the CLAT underwent a huge change last year. In fact, all the sections changed last year. Now what we see, the legal reasoning is very different from the legal reasoning question that we usually find in the CLAT. However, the skill set, the basic skill set that is required to do well in these kind of questions remain the same. That is what we're going to look at in this particular lesson. When I look at legal reasoning, that particular word or phrase has got its two parts. One is legal, other is reasoning. And what is reasoning at the end of the day? Reasoning is the process by which you reach a conclusion after thinking about all the facts. Now, whether it is legal reasoning, logical reasoning, analytical reasoning, whatever it is, you can see X reasoning, whatever X may be. Please understand the skill set that is required is to handle all these questions by and large the same. You are arriving at some sort of a conclusion based on a fact. It so happened in legal reasoning question, the situations are legal in nature, but the fundamental skill set that is required is more or less the same as can be compared to critical reasoning, analytical reasoning, logical reasoning, what would be the subject. Now, when it comes to legal reasoning, there are 5 critical elements. Those are, number 1, the issue. What specifically is being debated? At the end of the day, it's about answering one particular question. Is this person liable? Is this person guilty? And that one, what is that issue? And the number 2 is a rule or the principle. What legal rules govern this issue? For us to arrive at any conclusion, we need to use, so at the end of the day, we are making a decision. To arrive at the decision is important that we need to have certain criteria. On what criteria would have based the decision, and that is given in the rule. And then you have facts. What are the facts relevant to these rules? For us to apply the facts onto the rule, we need to understand the facts that are relevant to those particular criteria. And that's a process called analysis. Apply the rules to the fact. And then we arrive at the conclusion on that issue. That's a simple thing. So let's look at this in an old pattern question in CLAT 2015. There are 5 things: issue, rule, facts, analysis, and outcome. Now here in the old pattern, the rule is laid out very clearly for us. The fact is also laid out very clearly for us. And it's kind of much more easier to understand these 2 components, because the question does not force us to identify the principle from what is given, because it very clearly stated what the principle is. So therefore that in the earlier version of the CLAT, these 2, to look at what the rule is and look at what the facts are, is not so ambiguous as in what we see this year. But anyways, let's look at the skill set here. What does the principle say? A master is liable for the acts committed by his servant in the course of employment. And there is facts. Sanjay is a driver working in the Brookman and Company. One day the manager asked him to drop a customer at the airport and get back at the earliest. On his way back from the airport, he happened to see his fiancée Ruhina waiting for a bus to go home. He offered to drop her at home, which happened to be close to his office. She got into the car, and soon thereafter the car somersaulted due to the negligence of Sanjay. Ruhina was thrown out of the car and suffered multiple injuries. She seeks compensation from Brookland and Company. So ladies and gentlemen, the first particular component here is, what is the issue? What are we trying to solve? What we are trying to solve, the problem is she seeks compensation from Brookland and Company. The question is Brookland and Company liable? Great. For that we need to understand the rule. And what is the rule? Rule says the master is liable for the acts committed by his servant in the course of employment. When you look at the rules, we need to understand what are the elements of that particular rule. What is the critical element of the rule? Here, what is important? There is a master, there is a servant. So first of all, we need to understand whether there is a master in the fact, whether there is a servant in the fact. And the second thing is acts committed. Did the servant commit any act? And in the course of employment, which I believe is the most critical element of the rule. Did that, whatever that act supposedly committed, did that happen during the course of employment? Now, when you look at the facts, it is absolutely crucial and important that we look at the facts that are relevant. Let's look at each sentence. Sanjay is a driver working in Brookland and Company. Relevant because we understand Sanjay in this case would be the servant and the Brookland and Company would be the master. One day the manager asked him to drop a customer at the airport and get back at the earliest. Relevant because the master here is asking him to do a particular job, and that is to drop a customer at the airport and get back at the earliest. So dropping and getting back would be in the course of employment. Let's see what happened on his way back. So that is on the course of his employment. Is doing the job. It's part of his job. Coming back from the airport is also part of the job. He happened to see his fiancée Ruina waiting for a bus to go home. He offered to drop her at home, which happened to be close to his office. Whether it is close to his office or not is actually irrelevant to this particular rules. She got in the car and soon thereafter the car somersaulted due to the negligence of Sanjay. So there is an act that is committed by the servant. So let's do the analysis here. Let's look at what are the checks. Master, check. Servant, check. Act is committed, check. Did it happen in the course of employment? Yes, because it was on his way back. So it happened in the course of employment. All check. So therefore what is the outcome? The company is liable, and therefore your answer choice is A. Brookland Company shall be liable because Sanjay was in the course of employment at the time of accident. So that's what you do. So basically you understand the rule, you understand the critical elements of the rule, and look at the relevant facts and apply to that particular element and arrive at the conclusion. That particular reasoning process has not changed, but what has changed is the way in which the question is framed. In the earlier case, we are given very clearly something is mentioned as a principle, and very clearly something is mentioned as a fact. But unfortunately, in the new version of CLAT legal reasoning, it is not explicitly mentioned what is the principle is supposed to apply. So you have to do a job of identifying what the principles are or what the rules are. So let's have a look at the CLAT 2020 questions 71 to 75. And before that, let's quickly look at how are these questions framed. At the first end, you have the passage. And then you have this question 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, when you look at the first thing issue, the issue would be different for different questions. The facts would be different for different questions. Therefore, the analysis would be different for different question. The outcome would be different for different question. But what is common for all these questions is a rule. So when you read the passage, your most important skill set is that can you identify the rule? I'm not asking you to remember the rule. No, I'm asking you to identify the rule. So once you read the passage, your job is that can I understand the rule? Or what are those sentences that I read which looks like a rule sentence? A rule sounding sentence, the sentence that gives me criteria to make decisions. And that is a key skill set that you need to develop in the current version of legal reasoning passages. Now, therefore, reading is like traveling and it's like a traffic signal. We need to understand what our red signals are, which is what is something that tells us a rule. What is that rule? And the yellow signal are those things are indicators, which will come to that, which gives a signal, okay, this could be the rule. Can I look at some words, things that suggest that this is going to be important, this particular part is important. And all those green signals are those things which are, okay, I'll read it, but I'll not remember. These are things added in the particular passage, which is probably not very relevant when it comes to the questions. But the key thing is that can I identify those red signals when I read? Let's have a look at this particular passage here. This is the CLAT 2020 questions for question number 71 to 75. Let's give it a read. It says, the issue of obscenity has vexed the courts in India and abroad for a long time now. Now, when you read this first sentence, what does that mean? You understand from it. So there is, for example, the discussion is about obscenity. Okay, the fact that it vexed the court in India and abroad for a long time now is not relevant. The important thing I'm going to pick up on the first sentence is that this passage is about obscenity. And when I'm reading it, I will look at from this context is that let me try and identify certain rules about obscenity. The intriguing question has always been the same. What should be the standard to qualify something as obscene in the eyes of the law? Now, when you have any sentence which has got a question mark, that is a great indicator sentence that tells us what this passage is about. The passage about what are the standards to qualify something as obscene. So the whole passage is about what standards, what criteria would I use to call something to be obscene. When I read this, I need to understand obscene and what are the criteria that I'm going to use. Okay, let's give it a go. In the United Kingdom, so we have certain criteria which is here. So in the United Kingdom, way back in 1868, the code laid down the Hicklin test. Now we have something that explicitly mentioned there is something known as a Hicklin test. So we have got one rule is a Hicklin test. Let's call it HT. In Regina v. Hicklin, 1868, LR2QB360, irrelevant. Okay, this is the green signal. Let's not bother about these things, and held that the test of obscenity is whether the tendency of the matter charged as obscenity is to deprave and corrupt those whose mind are open to such immoral influences and into whose hands a publication of this sort may fall. Now we have got this sentence which is like, what are you talking here? The test whether the tendency of the matter. So this is, now look at the rule here. The tendency of the matter charged obscenity is to deprave and corrupt those whose minds are open to such immoral influences. Whether whatever that is published is going to corrupt certain people. Hicklin postulated that the publication has to be judged. So this is absolutely key. You know why this is key? Because we understood from reading here is that the particular passage actually asking us or telling us that is going to tell us what standards are we going to use to qualify something as obscene. So how will he judge something as obscene? So this particular sentence which says has to be judged, it's an important yellow signal, ladies and gentlemen, for us to understand whatever comes next is going to be very crucial. For obscenity based, publication has to be judged for obscenity based on isolated passages of work considered out of context and judged by their apparent influence on most susceptible readers such as children or weak-minded adults. So it says it has to be looked at from isolated and out of context. Don't look at anything. I have to look at that, and it has to be based on how it's going to influence the most susceptible readers. MSR. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the key about HT. Let's read. However, now there is another word. Whenever you see this however, you need that there is going to be a shift. There is probably people would have said, what kind of rule is this? This is like a crazy rule. The test was later rejected by most of the jurisdiction. Great. So this has been rejected. So which we have got some of the rules. So we have got rule. One rule is the Hicklin test. So we may get another rule. Let's read. There are many judgments. Okay. There were many judgments where it was stipulated by the Indian courts that obscenity has to be judged in the context. Now HT is saying out of context. Indian court is saying it has to be in the context. You have to judge in the context. Context is important. That is critical, ladies and gentlemen. The context of what? Contemporary social mores, current socio-moral attitude of the community, and the prevalent norms of acceptability, susceptibility of the community in relation to the matter of the issue. And then you have got something which is this is another signal. For example, what does for example mean? This particular thing is to give further details. So that is sort of explaining the rule that is being stated. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a green signal. It's something that I'll read, but I'll not commit to my memory. In Ranjit Udeshi, where we state Maharashtra, and there are 3 examples that is given, which will not bother too much. These judgments indicated the context of obscenity would change with passage of time, and what might have been obscene at one point in time would not be considered obscene at a later period. So this is also, this can change. This can change. And this came to be known as the Community Standards Test. We have got CST, let's call it CST, Community Standards Test. In Bobbyard International or V. Om Pal Singh, who 1996 the court upholding the community standards held that complete message and context observational scene etc. needs to be examined in order to find out whether the alleged material is obscene or not. We need to look at the complete message and context. That is important. So when you read this particular passage, all that we are taking away is this particular part. So basically, what is obscene? HT said isolated, and whether it is going to influence the most susceptible reader like child. The Indian code, community standard said context important. The context important. Now, when you look at these kind of passage here and look at this particular rule here, this is what I'm going to call as a very broad rule. Context. It is very broad, and it's this is the first one is much more narrow in context. The second one is much more broader in terms of application of that particular rule. So let's give it a go in the questions. So the point here, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you read the passage, the skill set that you have to develop is that can I pick up my rules? And if it is a paper-based test, you can actually underline this, identify it, probably put a star here, probably put a star there. If it is an online test, maybe do some doodling work here. And this year the CLAT has said that it's going to be a paper-based test. Hopefully it's going to be a paper-based test. Let's see that happens. I don't know. The COVID situation is really bad now. Maybe they'll go to online. God knows what is going to happen. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll be ready for both. If it's a paper-based test, pretty easy to put a star next to it and saying that this is what I'm going to be crucial. You may even not remember every single aspect of it, but I know that a community standard test is mentioned here. Hicklin tests are mentioned there. I know the broad difference between these two tests, and I'm going to apply it. If the question forces me to look back, I'll come back and look at those things to specifically evaluate those rules. But the most important thing is, can I see the rules in these passages? Let's look at question number 1. Local dailies. Now we have the facts here, but all we have to look at in this particular thing is what is the issue, and importantly the analysis, which means I need to look at the facts which are relevant. So let's check the facts that are relevant. A daily local newspaper called Ramanand Bazar Patrika, having wide circulation in Anandnagar, published on 1st July 2019 an article with the picture of Boris Becker, a world-renowned tennis player, posing nude with his dark-skinned fiancée by name Barbara Feltus, a film actress, which was photographed by none other than her father. Okay, great. So basically what he said, that there is a nude picture. Okay. Now, for us to do the community standards, we need to understand the context. If you look at the context, is important. But when it comes to Hicklin test, the context is not important. Basically, this will fail the Hicklin test. Okay, so Hicklin basically said that the Hicklin test does not care about the context, but our community standards does care about the context. Now let's look at whether what is relevant for me is that, is there a context here? Is there a context? Is there a context based on the contemporary social moral, current social moral attitude, the prevalent norms? Is there any social context to this nude, or was it random? Let's see, the article stated that in the interview, both Boris Becker and Barbara Feltus spoke freely about their engagement, their lives and future plans, a message they wanted to convey. There's a message they wanted to convey the people at large for posting such a photograph. There is a context, ladies and gentlemen. We have seen the context here. So to apply that particular rule, what we understand is that context is important. Let's see, what is there a context? Article picturized Boris Becker as a strident protest of the pernicious practice of apartheid. Further, it was stated that the purpose of the photograph was to signify love, champions of hatred. Oh, Indian community standard test says it is okay, but Hicklin test, no. So we have done. Let's look at, will the alleged picture of obscene material in India? No, according to the Hicklin test. It will not, according to the Hicklin test, ladies and gentlemen, it will be obscene, because Hicklin test does not care about the context at all. For Hicklin test, all these are relevant. Hicklin test basically say nude, gone. You're going to dip. So for Hicklin test, this particular part was relevant. But for our community standard is relevant. Yes, according to the community standard test, no, community standard test looks at the context. So the answer choice has to be C, right? According to the community standard test, no. According to the community standard, will not be classified obscene, because there is a context to it, which is those things, counter social moral, current social moral attitude. The context is fine. The context is fine. Answer choice is C. Let's look at question number 72. The difference between Hicklin test and community standard test is. Now this is more like a reading comprehension question, or from the context of legal reasoning, this is about, have you understood the rules? Did you identify the elements of the rules? That, ladies and gentlemen, is a key question here. Do you understand the rule? We understood the rule with respect to Hicklin test and community standard test. The former, which is Hicklin test, focus on susceptibility of minds of individual to get corrupted, while the latter hinges upon the context, intended meaning and contemporaneous. Absolutely right. So we can actually mark the answer choices A. This is actually the rule. As we identified, the formal focuses on the mind, individual get corrupted, but the latter hinges on the context. As per Hicklin test, a nude picture of a woman per se can be obscene, while for the latter, the picture should be suggestive, depraved mind, and suggest sexual. What is all this? Completely irrelevant. What sexual passion is mentioned there? The former consider obscenity as a changing concept. No way. Hicklin test says that there is nothing change. There is no changing concept. Community standard test is changing concept. Answer choice, ladies and gentlemen, is answer choice number A. Let's look at question number 73. The issue of obscenity is fundamentally related with which one of the following. So here we'll have to probably think of using. Let's look at reasoning. And it's probably we'll have to use ditch me method. You know what a ditch me method is? Ditch me is elimination. I want to ditch answer choices. That is ditch me as a method. Pick me is when the answer choices speak to us. For example, in this particular case, I'm sure the answer choice A spoke to us, said this, please pick me, please pick me. And here, of course, we have to look at ditch me. Let's ditch some answer choices. Freedom of religion. Where is religion here? There is no religion here. Ladies and gentlemen, goes for a toss, which means all of the above goes for a toss. Freedom of speech and expression of individual makes sense. Right to privacy, obscenity. What is it? People decided to post something obscene, and the whole thing is about the publication posting something obscene. Where is the right to privacy? There is no right to privacy being mentioned. It is more in terms of the freedom of speech and expression of individual. Can I write something that I want to post in the context of social current social moral attitude, and do I have the freedom to discuss these things without you calling it obscene, without you saying that I'm offended by what you're saying? Ladies and gentlemen, this can be B would be the answer, and this is something that we would have answered based on the ditch me process. Let's look at question number 74. Consider the following situation. Choose the option as Hicklin test. We know Hicklin test. Hicklin test is very narrow. There is no context relevant so long as something is something. Where is it? More susceptible. Where is that? More susceptible readers such as children or weak-minded adults. So if something is considered obscene for a child, it is gone. So basically, it is very easy to fail Hicklin test. Basically. And I'm already guessing that 1 and 2 is going to fail the Hicklin test, and both will be considered obscene by Hicklin test. That is my gut feeling, ladies and gentlemen. I hope. Let's see. A movie scene where there were rows of Jewish naked women, finished. It is going to corrupt the children. Shown frontally being led into the gas chambers of Nazi concentration camp. Not only they were about to die. Irrelevant. Context. All these context not relevant. This has to be looked at isolation. There is something naked. Okay. Obscene. One is obscene, ladies and gentlemen. 2. The context of the movie scene of Full and Devi, the married queen who is parade naked. Finished. Over. Obscene. As per Hicklin test. Because Hicklin test does not care about context, ladies and gentlemen. Both are obscene. Answer choice has to be C. Then you have question number 75. An activist, while being semi-nude, allowed. First of all, the question says it's a case as per community standard. Oh, good. Community standard gives us a lot of leeway in looking at the context. Okay, first of all, we have an activist, while being semi-nude, allowed a body to be used as a canvas to paint on by 2 minor children who were properly clothed. She uploaded this video of hers on an online platform with the message that she intended to normalize a female form for her children and not allow distorted idea of sexuality to pervade mind. And I can see, okay, so first of all, there is a context. There she is putting it for the purpose of certain social moral attitude. Now, whether the children are minor in this particular case is irrelevant. Is it relevant? It is irrelevant. There is nothing in the rule that talks anything, especially the community standards, which talks anything about where the minor being an issue. This is actually irrelevant to the case. One of the things that legal reasoning does give is put something that is not mentioned in the particular passage, not based on the rule, but will force you to think it is. So it is irrelevant. What is relevant is that he uploaded for a particular purpose and to correct the distorted idea of sexuality. There is a context. So Is a case of obscenity as per community standard test? No. This is the pure case of obscenity. She's spitting it. No, she's not. It's a pure case of obscenity as well as child porn. What is this? What is this? What child pornography? What is this? This is not a case of obscenity. Because as per the community standard, the video must not be seen in isolation but in the contextual set of messages that is activist put normalized. Amazing answer choice C. This is a case of obscenity as per community. No, this is not. So ladies and gentlemen, that's how we solve it. So what did you learn? You learned that one, there are basically few things that is important. One is the rule, and there is a fact, relevant facts, and there's analysis which you end up applying the relevant fact onto the particular rule. That is analysis that you do, and based on that you have to arrive at your outcome. First of all, and you have to basically understand the issue, of course, and that's the whole thing. So when you read the passage, the most critical skill set that is required is that do you understand the rules? Can you identify the rules? So ladies and gentlemen, in the subsequent lesson, we'll get deeper into this, looking at different types of passages and hopefully give you some perspective in terms of how to deal with these kind of questions. Bye bye.